12 years ago, the Queensland Reds against the British and Irish Lions was one of the best games of the tour.
That was a banger.
It was as good as it gets, really, in terms of those Lions tour games. You had, some brilliant tries from both sides. It was like peak. Like
Quade
Saturday
Cooper
morning
taking
entertainment.
quick taps all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God, it was brilliant.
Quade wasn't in the Wallaby squad because he'd fallen out for Ewan McKenzie and ended up, being drafted into that game and was just going for it.
Rod Davis' second shot at international rugby.
Of course.
Yeah, Dom Shipley was playing.
Yeah,
what a team they had. Was he the Reds at that time? Yeah. Yeah, was that where he scored that banging try? Oh, mate.
It was brilliant. Just like such a good day. That was one of the best games of that tour, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a chance we could see that again this week. This is one of, I think, obviously the Brumbies are coming up late on, but this is going to be a proper test for the Lions.
The Reds have been, they're quite inconsistent in Super Rugby this year. That their highs have been astronomical.
Yeah.
But when they've not had either like good availability or they've had an off day or away from home, the conditions against them, whatever, they've had a few dodgy like slip ups of results. But when they're at their best, the Reds are so entertaining to watch.
They finished 5th end off, which I think is probably fair when you look at their form and results.
Yeah.
You kind of dig into it a bit because ultimately, right, I think other than the qualifying playoff game, which is the most bullshit game of rugby imaginable, like, I don't know if you looked into that. There's a topic for another time, right? But that round of games was bullshit. Other than that one game against Crusaders, they were in every game they played this season, right? Like, they were thereabouts. I think they missed out on like a losing bonus point, I think maybe twice. It might have even just been the once. And they were always in games, right? And they did that often through playing great rugby.
Yeah. And often, I think, so we want to talk about the Reds first here, I think, because for them, it's a huge occasion. It's the first time, as you say, in 12 years that they've been able to play against the British and Irish Lions. Whenever I watch the Reds play this season, I just got the most insane main character energy from Tate McDermott. And unfortunately, he is one of the names that Joe Schmidt has withdrawn from this game.
Yeah.
So instead, we're going to see Kalani Thomas step up, who's a very, very good player in his own right. I'm very excited to see how he gets along. But with no McDermott, no party, you know what I mean? And he's often the vice captain for the Reds, with their regular captain, Ryan Smith, being on the bench. So up steps Jock Campbell, who, again, is a player that's always been very good when he's played like higher level teams in both Test rugby and at club level, right? And to see him getting another go here was really, really super exciting.
Yeah.
So there's so many big names in this Reds team that really, really excite me.
Yeah. And his captain before, captain him against, it was either the Waratahs or the Brumbies. I was watching that morning and they blew into one at some point. But as captain before, and by all accounts, really popular guy, really good captain as well.
Yeah.
And has been playing really well. And perhaps isn't flashy and stylish in the way that, the Tom Wrights of the world are, but has been playing some really good solid
You don't have
rugby
to
there.
be playing consistent international rugby to be a brilliant player, and Jock Campbell is exactly that.
We saw at the weekend against the Force what happens when you've got a back three that aren't dealing with Finn Russell, right?
Yeah.
And Dylan Peach said after the game he was really cut out because no one goes for cross kicks outside the 22 in Super Rugby. So like that massively caught him out, the fact that Finn Russell was doing that all the time.
Yeah.
And Jock Campbell won't fall for that. Like he's incredibly smart, he reads the game incredibly well. That'll be a huge note for this.
And alongside him, you've got Lockie Anderson, who's really quick player on the right wing, and Tim Ryan, otherwise known as the Junkyard Dog, on the left wing, who is box office.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is, Finn Russell starting at 10 for the Lions once again here, and he loves that risky crossfield kick. Often in his own 22, he likes to go for them. The way he kicks the ball, he's often very low and flat in terms of how he likes to crossfield it. He wants it to go really quickly from A to B. Same with his passing, he puts loads of power behind it because he wants the ball to move fast. The thing with Tim Ryan is, if he intercepts one of these, he is off. Same with Lockie Anderson, right? When Tim Ryan gets a load of space, he can finish.
Tim Ryan is one of the players I'm most excited to see on this Lions tour, right? Yeah. There was someone in the comments the other day on the video on the Western Force game on the main channel talking about how they need to abolish these games for future tours, how they're not interesting, they're boring. But like this is a large part of the appeal. Like I love these as much as I do the tests because you get to see players like Tim Ryan, like Ryan Smith, like Thomas, like all these guys we're mentioning, right? Play against the Lions, which will never get that chance again.
Yeah.
Tim Ryan is possible, like he's young, but they're getting this chance here to play against the Lions.
Even players,
that is huge for them.
Like the guys who were probably second choice for the Wallabies, that you look at like Lukan Solokai right? That if, let's say, Nick Frost holds firm for all three tests, he might just keep his spot the whole Test series, right? And this is Lucan Saleh-Halotto's chance to go, no, I want that jersey. I'm going to play phenomenally well and outclass Maro Itoje.
You look at Nick White last week being asked to be released to play because he wanted to definitely play against the Lions, having 12 years ago broken his shoulder in the last game of Super Rugby and missed the tour. Like, this is huge for these guys. And Tim Ryan's a guy I'm really excited about. He is a guy who I want to coin a term that may not make sense in Australia, right? But he is what I would call bullshit Brexit. Like, he is a player who is who is like, we always talk about the bullshit players right here, that are guys who can just create something out of nothing and you're like, oh, that wasn't a chance, but you just scored from it. He is like that, and yet he has massive Brexit player energy.
He does.
Kieran Williams, another guy to count on there.
Like a bit of a meme player, but in a good way.
Because
he shouldn't be as good as he is. And I always feel
Dan
like
Lancaster
I sound like...
has this energy.
I feel like I sound like I'm joking. I come across like I'm joking like every time I talk about Tim Ryan. But I genuinely just think the guy's incredible.
He's incredible. He's brilliant. And yet there is something really like scrappy about him. Like, he's not like a Lacan Yuam, like he's effortlessly class, like he does things easily. He glides across the ground. Like, no, you can almost see him like scratching out
He's
the ground.
He's an underdog, man. Nick Cummins would love him.
The Junkyard Dog is a perfect name because he runs like a junkyard dog.
He does.
Like, he looks like he's digging up the turf as he goes. He's brilliant. And the thought of him playing against this all-star team is phenomenal.
So with that in mind, the back three is a huge area to this. If we're going to say, right, let's just skip forward to Thursday morning. The papers are all saying the Reds have come up with this phenomenal win against the Lions. What do we think's gone well for them in that case?
So I think a lot of it will be that attacking rugby we were talking about. One interesting thing, you mentioned Tate McDermott is on the list of players that Joe Schmidt has kept in the squad, the 25 players he's been allowed to keep. One of the other names he's kept is Tom Liner, right, who has been the normal fly half for the Reds. However, they have very much shared the shirt this season with Harry McLaughlin-Phillips, who was the under-20s fly half for Australia last year, was very good there. Was like, you look at him going like, oh, this kid's something. Him and Tom Liner have then both been excellent whenever they've been given a chance. He picked up an injury at the end of Super Rugby, so he missed the last couple of games, but has got back in time for this game, which is a huge boost for the Reds to have one of their 2-10s that they rely on. I think we could see, if the Reds are to go on and win this game, this is probably the game where he announces himself to World Rugby beyond just kind of fans of Australian rugby as like, I am the guy. I am going to be, one of the Wallaby 10s going forward. Have a look at me, Joe Schmidt, and let's kiss down the line.
I think you're right that McLaughlin-Phillips having this absolute masterclass is one of those things
I think
that
it's
you mentioned
possible.
in those papers. 100%. I think as well, you look at the scrum. It's a big thing. So you're looking at Aidan Ross and Jeff Tumunga Allen, the man that he is, still going. He's an outstanding player, Jeff Tumunga Allen, and I'm so glad to still see him on these team sheets at this point playing against the British and Irish Lions. But both of those really, really well-rounded props do not move backwards very far at scrum time and are really, really good around the park. Great carriers, the pair of them. Great ball players, the pair of them. And also Matt Fessler at hooker. I think that scrum and line-out are his bread and butter. He's a phenomenal line-out thrower. And as we saw against Wales in the autumn last year, really good on the back of his maul, really good at decision-making on just really simple stuff like when to break off. And his upper body strength is running into people and carrying the ball is phenomenal.
Leader as well.
I think that we could see him at the heart of it if the Reds are destined for a great game. And also another name that we have to mention in the forward pack is Seru Uru, who is around the park a brute. There's sometimes you look at a rugby player and you're like, I would just hate to tackle you because you look like you're bony and nasty and just horrible and like slimy. And he's such a good carrier and just brutal when it comes to coming off the line and nailing people.
You got Ryan Smith on the bench. He's playing his last game for them. One of the most popular men in Queensland rugby. He's leaving to join the Ospreys next season, but this will be his last game. He's given leave to play his game rather than his contract starting. So again, like someone that may give everything off the bench. But you then also have, we haven't mentioned them, the two centres.
Yes.
Right? These centres were starting for the Wallabies a year ago.
That's it. You look at, because the Wallabies have Joseph Akusu Sua'ali'i, they have Samu Karevi, they have Lenny Katau. Those are three bordering on world-class centres right there. And for most other nations in the world, you would look at Josh Fluke and particularly Hunter Paisami, and you just go, yeah, I want those guys. I will bite your hand off to take those
Wales
guys.
definitely would.
Yeah, exactly. And Josh Fluke, really well balanced player, runs outstanding lines. His dummy lines, I think something
That's the thing
really
I'm gonna bring up,
underrated about him. And to play off someone like Paisami, he's so underrated in terms of his distribution and so on. Very similar to what we always say about Sione Tuipulotu, that really deft touch on the ball, has that eyes out the back thing that he often does with Fluke running that short line. And the main thing that impresses me about Paisami is his kicking game.
Yeah.
The little deft grubbers in behind.
Those short kicks.
Yeah, or the crossfield kicks. He gets them on the money. And you talk about McLaughlin Phillips at 10. He's obviously a brilliant talent, but if the Lions start targeting him because they go, brilliant, there's a young 10, let's get Bundy Aki to mark him and just try and nail him all the time, Paisami will have none of it. And he'll go, right, no worries, mate, give me half your work. And he'll happily take that workload off him. He is unselfish in terms of his defence, with thinking about his flankers, making sure they're engaged on the scrum, and he's unselfish in terms of attack, with making sure his 10 is getting everything he can out of the game.
Yeah, baller Paisami.
Yeah.
He is one of the most exciting talents in Southern Hemisphere rugby.
Yeah.
He's a guy who obviously is sometimes inconsistent, sometimes makes decisions perhaps you wish he hadn't for the team's sake. But as a viewer, as a neutral, you can't help but love
I was
watching
about to
him
say, if you pick a World Barbars team in there, you're taking
He's in
Paisami,
contention,
aren't you?
certainly.
Yeah, what
so
a player.
We haven't really mentioned the Lions.
Yeah, we
probably
should do that. Yeah.
They are the touring team. They're the main attraction here. All the players that hadn't previously got a start, aside from the two Scottish lads that have just arrived now, are in this team. So we've got the likes of Ollie Chesham is starting for the first time, Andrew Porter starting for the first time.
Ronan
Ronnie
Kelleher.
Kelleher has played both games off the bench. I think they only play involved in all 3 games so far.
Yeah.
Alex
Mitchell will
as
be,
well.
yeah. JGP
Yeah.
starting for the first time.
Yeah, Will Stewart starting for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, you've got a bunch of them. There, Hugh Jones also starting for the first time. James Ryan will make his Lions debut off the bench. I would have thought he would have gone in 2017. What happened there? So you've got a bunch of those. You've also got Finn Russell is the one unchanged or not changed player who is backing up Saturday to Wednesday, 5-day turnaround, starting both times. Obviously was brought off with sort of, half an hour, 20 minutes to go. I think clearly with an eye to this game.
Yeah.
To give Marcus Smith minutes at 10. So how are you feeling about this Lions team?
I think that Finn Russell selection is to really see what his best centre combo is. That if he ends up starting in the Test series, they're going to have to put all their chips in him.
Yeah.
And that he needs to know which centre combo he's best around. The best one we saw so far, unsurprisingly, Sione Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones.
Yeah.
When there was very little crossover before Russell went off in that game. However, obviously, he plays really well with those guys.
Those two got the best out of each other once they came. Obviously, Hugh Jones didn't play without him, but Sione looked a much better player at 12 than he did against Argentina at 13. But he then looked even better when Hugh Jones came on.
I think Archie and Hugh Jones is a really interesting centre combo to go with, because Archie is capable of playing in the same way that Sione does week in, week out, alongside Hugh Jones. And I'd imagine having Finn Russell there will just help simplify the language a little bit in terms of having somebody around him that that he knows as well, because Bundy Aki is so experienced and he's so good as a ball distributor or just a hard runner. He's one of those players who can equally be a hitter or a boot. And yeah, I think that's really, really important for Hugh Jones starting his first game on this tour. I can really see that midfield working well together.
Me too.
And if they do, they could potentially get a foot in the Test team.
It's the right thing to do, right? Is we know that Hugh Jones and Sione can play together. We know that Ringrose and Archie can play together. So you want to try those two combinations next to each other and just try and mix and match. Yeah. And I think they probably, in trying Archie and Tuipulotu together, realised at least if they're going to do that, it'd have to be Archie at 13. You have to shift that about. Like, that didn't really work as a combo. So he's probably gone, okay, we've got 2 12s and 2 13s. And if needs be, we can move Tommy Freeman or Elite Daly or someone inwards. But realistically, that's what we're looking at, and it's trying to get every combination together to play together before they nail down the Test team.
There's one more problem solved that he's done from the Argentina game as well, because there was a lot of, I guess, criticism of him picking 3 short back rowers in Ben Hill, Jack Morgan and Tom Curry in that first game. And a lot of blame went on to both Luke Cowan-Dickie and Ronan Kelleher, but the line-out is an 8-man operation. Yeah. Like, something has to go wrong in multiple departments for it to go as wrong as it did against Argentina. And he's changed that in the previous game by putting Tyburn in the back row and putting Big Joe McCarthy in. This time he's gone with Itoje and Chesham in the second row, both really renowned line-out operators, both experienced callers as well, which I think is really important, that they can converse about that and take pressure off each other.
And
but
probably the most athletic jumpers in the squad as well, aside from Byrne. Like, Chesham is probably the closest to like an out-and-out line-out specialist we have here.
Yeah.
Then Itoje, like, notorious how quickly he gets in the air.
Yeah.
Like, his jump speed.
And the main one here is Jack Conan coming in at number 8. That he is... It's probably unarguable that in terms of the out-and-out back rowers in the Lions squad, he's the best line-out operator there. And I think that's a really, really good thing to test out at this point. From a test series point of view, you want to know, can we manage with Tom Curry and Jack Morgan as the 2 flankers?
Yeah.
Or even sub out Jack Morgan for, let's say, Ben Earl or Josh van der Fleer or whoever, you know?
Yeah.
That if you've got 2 flankers who are proper flankers who aren't huge line-out jumpers, can we still get by as long as we've got Conan in the 8 jersey?
Yeah. The stat we brought up in the Argentina video, which was then repeated on Rugby Union regularly, I believe is the podcast's current name, which is that I believe in the last 49, 48 games between them, Jack Morgan and Ben Earl had taken 5 or 6 lineouts, which is very low figures. Tom Curry is an occasional jumper for sale. And
they used him quite a lot against Argentina.
And so they had to use him more than you normally would, right?
Yeah.
Against Argentina. Having him and Conan together probably makes up for not having a specialist there. Because Jack Morgan can jump, but he isn't really a jumper.
Yeah.
So you
Especially compared to those lads the Reds have.
Yeah.
Like, they have jumpers all across the pack.
But it's like Moneyball, right? Like, you've got to make it up in the aggregate.
Yeah.
Like, you go, okay, we're going Itoje and Byrne in the test team. In the back row, we need another jumper. Do we move Byrne in and we put McCarthy in or Chesham in or whoever, or even Chesham himself at 6? Or do we make it up in the aggregate? And we go, okay, Curry and Conan between them jump enough that we don't need a specialist.
Yeah. I think that's a huge question mark that's been over the Lions at this point because, you know, Joe Schmidt is licking his lips at what happened against Argentina.
And so to a large extent against the Western Force. Like, the lineup still was far from perfect.
Yeah. Farrell will be sweating a little bit about that and going, right, what is our fix here? Is it going to be Byrne on the back row? Or can we get away with it with Conan?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. Obviously, as I say, a lot of the blame went on to Ronan Kelleher, particularly when he came on with that one where no one jumped, which isn't really his fault.
No, it's not.
It's the furthest thing from his fault. But it makes him look daft, right? Yeah. And so having him start, I really hope that's a really big confidence boost for him. And, you know, for Lions fans watching with him playing in there, they have Luke Cowan-Dickie on the bench as well, who typically is an excellent line-out and more forward when he plays for Sale Sharks. Yeah. So, yeah, you would hope that from a Lions perspective that that's going to be a huge thing. And also, Tom Curry was outstanding against Argentina. Jack Morgan, I think, probably needs a really outspoken game.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of him adapting to the system and being used in a different way to how he's used with Wales or the Ospreys.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
It's the biggest change for him out of every player in this Lions squad.
Yeah.
You know,
he's got good players around him.
Yeah.
Like, he's not just fiddling all the time.
He's literally playing with one player that he plays with in Thomas Williams, who's now gone home. Yeah. So, you know, you do have to make a little bit of allowance for him, but also that will still be the case in the test team unless he learns, you know, quickly.
I think we'll see much more from Jack Morgan this week.
I think I have a good feeling. Yeah.
I think also some of the nerves are gone from I'm playing for the Lions. You know?
Yeah.
And also he was brought off for 45 minutes last week. Like, we didn't really get to see much of him.
Yeah.
So there is a real opportunity to both see more of him from a minutes point of view.
And the him and Curry combination, I want to see that flourish.
This is a back row that suits him better. Yeah. Morgan has always been very upfront that he sees the back row as one position rather than 3. And I think him and Curry could play all the way around. You could drop them in either position. He could play 8 as well. Like, that is a pack that really suits the way he plays. And hopefully, positionally and role-wise, he's allowed to do that. And he's allowed to roam a bit more, as we saw Van der Fleer do, right? Which was, I think, clearly, Morgan was told, like, these are the things we want you doing. And then anything you do on top of that is a bonus. And he was like, I don't know the system. I'm going to stick to just the things that I do.
Yeah.
And I'm told to do. And hopefully we'll see him free up a bit and be a bit looser and, you know, more able to impact the game.
It'll be really interesting seeing how well he plays.
Yeah.
Likewise, Duhan van der Merwe as well.
Every involvement Jack Morgan had against Argentina was positive. Yeah. Just that there weren't as many as we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd agree with that. Duhan van der Merwe likewise as well, because so far the Lions have largely used their wingers as playmakers, and I think he's the anomaly in that he's a strike runner rather than a playmaker. And the thing is, he's got a point of difference from all of the other wingers, and sure, the rest of them are all very, very quick and really good in open fields, but he has that bullshit factor above every other winger or back three player in this squad.
Yeah.
The other name that we've not mentioned playing his first game...
There's two.
Hugo Keenan,
Yes.
I want to talk about because, again, much like I was saying about Bundy Arki, he just is a system player. That in an attack, he can run short lines, he can run curved lines out the back.
He can distribute.
He can distribute, he can stand on the wing. And I think that's really, really good in terms of giving Doohan and Tommy Freeman as much space, as much time as they can. Sometimes Hugh Jones likes to slide out as well, you know, and I think that it's something that particularly, well, with I think probably 2 of the tries that the Lions scored in the Force game, particularly the Joe McCarthy one, it was not positionless in the sense we would like to use it, but they're willing to all swap around, and like Sione can go in at 10, and like there was that point where Marcus Smith then slid in the fullback position, as it were, and I really like that they can mix and match around that. I think Keenan really adds something to the Lions in terms of
It's
that.
an interesting one that Keenan isn't getting a shot until the third game of the tour, when it's only 5 games for the first test, and the next one will presumably be Kinghorn getting his shot finally, having arrived from France. And so Kinghorn is a much flashier player. And is he going to get more opportunity to impress against the Waratahs, who, going on Super Rugby, will be weaker opposition than this pretty well-loaded Reds team, where Keenan's job will be to diffuse, really, where Kinghorn will get more of a chance to like impress directly.
It's about this back three as a unit, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that you look at the Argentines started bombing Doan van der Merwe. Does Hugo Keenan then take all of that pressure off his shoulders because he's outstanding on the high ball?
Yeah,
we will see.
I think that's it. I think like a lot of that is what can he do in the context of the team and the positions, right? There was something really interesting I want to bring up more down the road that Mac Hansen said in the Stan Sport coverage. I don't think got picked up wider because he said it like an hour into the post-match on Stan Sport.
Did he drop a C-bomb?
No. He said, right, in attack, they're using a lot of the same calls as Ireland do. Not just the same moves, the same calls.
Same words.
And he said that, then he kind of went like, we'll probably need to change those at the Six Nations. So,
oh, what a guy. I love Mac Hansen.
They are really directly leaning into this, right? So we will see how do these 2 wingers in Freeman and Van der Merwe, now they've had some time, how do they fit into the Irish system? But also Hugh Jones, like this is the least Irish the backline has been so far. So is there a chance to lean into that and change that? The bench as well is interesting in having the 2 Northampton halfbacks together again to come on, but also Ringo as a safety blanket if they do go, we need someone who knows the Lens system and knows Farrell's system inside out to come on and pull that. The one thing I'll add, right, the one question mark I'll ask before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the first run out of the test team?
Not quite.
No.
Not quite. But I think that there are question marks about that. As I say, I think particularly that midfield, Andy Farrell is going to treat that as a dry run. Like, you 3 have an opportunity to be the test team. Same with the back row as well. You could say that. Like, if Jack Morgan's absolutely outstanding this weekend, then it could happen, you know. Like, you never really know that,
I think
a long way.
This is the strongest and the closest the Lions have come to it so far.
Yeah.
I think they are much closer. I think we didn't mention James Gibson Park, but him and Russell playing together, I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's going to be good.
Yeah.
How quick is that ball going to get into the 13 channel from the breakdown?
I know. That's going to be hugely fun to watch. And that is very much, you want those 2 together as a halfback pairing.
So, we nearly just finished an episode without me talking about James Gibson Park.
I talked about Jack Morgan for a few minutes, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Kieran Williams. So that is hugely exciting. I think he wants to have a look at this back row combination because that could potentially be the test back row.
Yeah.
And you want to see how that works.
At their ceiling, that could be it.
Yeah. And then the front row, right? Like, Sheehan will come in, but those 2 props could be the front row. Or equally, it could be Furlong and it could be Genge, who's really laid down the marker, and you need Porter to have a game here.
Genji was outstanding against Argentina.
And then you want to see how the back 3 works with him, because like those 2 wingers are sort of don't really fit what he wants, but are just outstanding enough that they got in. So I feel like this is the strongest team they've had so far. I'm really excited by it. I think there's also something really smart that Farrell's potentially doing, which I've never seen done on the Lions talk before, right? Because traditionally you talk about the midweek team being the weaker team, right? That it is, and a lot of that's a carryover from Clive Woodward bringing that mentality in 2005, having a separate midweek coach and the Saturday team being like his team, and Ian McGee can coach the midweek team, and like there were players that didn't meet until like 3 weeks into the tour because they were completely separate and they didn't train together, and it was all a disaster.
Or for the Wednesday.
Yeah. I think, is Farrell doing something really smart which is he's going to play his strongest team on the Wednesdays, so they get 10-day turnaround going into the first test. They get extra time off to rest, like the Wallabies will have, because they're not playing again after this weekend. Is that like a really smart gambit of going, we're going to play Wednesday, and then we're going to rest them on that Saturday, so they've got a 10-day turnaround?
And because like Warren Gatland did it before, sorry, the waterboard guy, yeah, him again. He did it before where he gave players a chance on the Wednesday, and some of them got straight in the team on the Saturday.
Yeah, Daly,
played really well.
Williams,
Yeah.
Liam Williams.
Yeah, exactly.
Williams.
And like I think Sean O'Brien as well, like got an opportunity for that, and like plenty of players. And I think that's a good way of doing it. However, you're right that giving them a longer rest could pay off. Yeah. Because as you say, the Wallabies are getting a longer rest. Yeah. You know that. It's worth giving yourself as many head starts as you can.
Do you think the Lions will blow away the Reds and same with the Western Force?
I don't think they'll blow them away. I would say, so what I was saying about the papers printing out, the Reds have had this masterclass from McLaughlin Phillips, and Matt Fessler was outstanding, and they've got this big scalp over the Lions.
Quade Cooper came back from the dead.
Yeah.
Genia ran out, scored the winning try like the 2011 World
I
Super
would
Rugby
put
final.
the odds at that at maybe about 30%. I'd say
Really, that high?
Well, maybe a little bit lower, but I would expect the Lions quite strongly to win the game, is my point.
I think the Lions will win by more than the score.
Yeah.
Like, I think they will pull away.
But I don't think they're going to score 50 points.
In the way the Western Force game was a game for about half an hour.
Yeah.
Then the Lions kind of pulled away just before half time.
Sure.
I think this will be a game for an hour.
Yeah.
And I think the Reds will stay in it for quite a long time. And then eventually...
I am actually looking forward to seeing the Reds' contribution to this,
yeah.
even as a Lions fan.
But I think there's a good chance the Lions end up winning on the scoreboard by 30 points, but like it won't feel that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a close game. Yeah. But
I think it'll be a close game for a period.
Yeah. But I expect the Lions to win.
Yeah.
But we shall see. It's not always how it goes on Lions tours. You always look at the team and you're like, oh, that's bloody incredible, isn't it? Then like Ehire West steps Lee Halfpenny and scores under the sticks and win the game. Like, stuff like this happens, and that's what makes Lions tours brilliant.
They've won one. They've lost one. It is time for the draw.
Yeah, maybe so. And it's what means that these games should be played rather than just writing them off.
Absolutely.
To end as we started.
I'm excited. We'll pick up more stuff on this game afterwards, after the full-time whistle. We've got a preview on Wales v Japan coming as well shortly. We're going to look at France v New Zealand as well. We may look at the Springboks against Italy. We may look at the other games.
See how much time we have.
Yeah, there's only so much time. But a lot of it is going towards the loins versus the Reds, which is a worry that your doctor should be informed about if you're currently suffering from loins v Reds.